Hey Church Kids, it's Mr. Damon, and we get to hang out again today, which is literally like one of my favoriteest things to do, like sit and eat Sour Patch Kids, watching the sunset, and hang out with you. They're kind of right there together, because that is how incredible you are. I don't think you realize just how smart, how important, how valuable, and how amazing you are. That is who God made you to be. And today, we are going to talk about let's just say, it's almost an unbelievable story if it wasn't in the Bible, but it is. But we'll get to that in just one second. But first, let's go to the Bible, because reading the Bible is one of the best ways for you and I to learn about who Jesus is. And in Exodus chapter 3, it says, "One day, Moses was tending the flock of sheep that belonged to his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing ball of fire from the middle of a bush. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, 'Moses, Moses,' he said. 'Here I am,' Moses replied. Then the Lord said to him, 'I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people out of Egypt.' But Moses protested to God, 'Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? And who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?' And God answered, 'I will be with you.'" And in Matthew 28:20, Jesus says, "And never forget, church kids, that I am with you every day." Wow, Jesus is with us every day? It's incredible. Now, yes, do you know what time it is? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the question of the week. And here's the question of the week. Have you ever been somewhere in the dark and got scared? Have you ever been in the dark before and got scared? Oh, church kids, I can remember when I was your age, I was scared of the dark. And let's just see, maybe scared of the dark still sometimes. Yeah. But when I was younger, I had two friends, Bryant and Tim, and they lived about 2 to 3 blocks away from my house. And I would go over to their house and play, but then it would get dark outside and, well, you know, it's time to go home. And I had to make the journey from their house back down to my house in the dark. And I would like to tell you that Mr. Damon walked along confidently. Ha ha ha, I'm not afraid. But that wasn't the case at all. I didn't walk at all because I would run. And literally from their front door, I would scream and run all those 2 to 3 blocks all the way to my front door. And I would open up my front door and then slam it behind me. Why? Because I was afraid of the dark, because I was alone. Have you ever felt that way before? Maybe you were in the dark by yourself. It is so easy to feel like no one else is around there with us. And if no one's with us, then maybe bad stuff's going to happen. But church kids, do you know what the truth is? The truth is, you and I are never alone, because God has made you a promise. And his promise is this: I will be with you every single day. Well, in our story, we pick up the Israelites are now in the country of Egypt, but they're not hanging out on vacation, all right? They have become slaves. The Egyptians basically captured all of the Israelites that were living there in the country and then forced them to begin to work for no pay. It's like what white people did in the United States of America by going and kidnapping people from Africa and bringing them over on ships and forcing them to work here in the United States for no pay. And the Israelites were treated horribly. In fact, it was so bad that Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, decided that he wanted to begin killing all of the male Israelite babies. It was terrible. Well, there was a mom and a dad, and they had a little baby boy, and his name was Moses. And they looked at this little baby, and they were like, we got to protect him. We got to keep him safe from the king of Egypt. And so the only thing they could think to do was they made this cool little tiny basket, like a baby boat, and then they put little baby Moses in it, and then they set him in the Nile River, and then they pushed him off, and were like, bye, baby Moses, you're gonna be okay because God's with you. And baby Moses was like, peace. And then down the river he floated. And then a little while later, guess who happened to be out hanging in the river? Pharaoh's daughter, the princess of Egypt. And she saw this tiny little baby boat, and she walked over, and she opened up the lid, and here is this beautiful little baby, Moses. And she's like, this baby's beautiful. He's in a boat. I should probably take care of him. And so she did. And she brought Moses into Pharaoh's palace. So church kids, watch this. Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses. And where does God put him? He literally takes Moses and puts him in Pharaoh's palace, and Pharaoh helps raise him. Ha! How great is God? God is like, oh, you want to do that? Guess what? I'm going to totally beat you at your own game. And so Moses grows up in Pharaoh's palace, but he knows that he's an Israelite, and he sees how the Egyptians are brutalizing and mistreating the Israelites, and decides one day he's going to do something about it. But then his plan goes terribly wrong. Pharaoh finds out, wants to murder Moses, and so Moses has to skedaddle out of Egypt, and he goes way out into the middle of the desert and basically gives up. He's like, well, I guess that didn't work, so I'm going to be a shepherd the rest of my life. Do you think that was the plan that God had for Moses? Because the whole time, God was with him. And so one day, Moses takes his sheep up on top of what he thinks is just an ordinary mountain. But it wasn't. It was Mount Sinai, a mountain in the Old Testament that's called the Mountain of God, where a whole bunch of really cool stuff happened. And on this particular day, Moses is there with his sheep on top of the mountain of God, and out of nowhere, woof, this bush catches fire. And Moses is like, whoa, must have been a lightning strike or something. It wasn't. Because as Moses stood there and looked at the bush, he was expecting it to burn up into a crisp and then just be like ash and then fall apart, but it didn't. The longer Moses looked at the bush, he realized it wasn't actually burning. And that got him curious, and so he walks over to this bush that's on fire, but it's not burning. And he's like, what is happening? And in that moment, God speaks to Moses. In fact, the Bible says it was the angel of the Lord. And do you know, church kids, that the angel of the Lord is actually a code name in the Old Testament for Jesus? Jesus was there. He gets Moses' attention with this burning bush, and then he begins to talk to Moses, and he says, Moses, I've been with you your whole life. I've been with the Israelites in Egypt this whole time, and I see how they're suffering. I want to use you as a leader to help bring them out of slavery. And Moses gets scared, church kids. All of a sudden, he gets insecure. He's like, God, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. You got the wrong guy. And listen to what God says. Jesus says to Moses, Moses, it's going to be okay, and here's how you know it's going to be okay. I will be with you. I'm with you. Church kids, when Moses heard that, it changed everything. Because he realized he wasn't alone. And he wasn't going to be by himself in the middle of that scary situation. If God was with him, God was going to work it out. And you and I, we face scary and hard situations in our own lives, don't we? I know you do. Even though you may be young, I know that you face situations where you feel scared, where you feel insecure, or maybe you feel lonely. And even though those feelings are real, they're not telling us the full truth. Because church kids, just like God promised Moses, I will be with you, he promises the exact same thing to you. So when you're angry and you don't know what to do and you're getting worked up, God's with you. When you're at school and you're having a really hard time trying to understand things and you've got thoughts in your head that are telling you you're not smart, look at everybody else, they understand, you're the only one that doesn't get it. Do you know that God's with you right then? Do you know that when you've got a friend who you think is your friend that turns their back on you and begins to say mean things about you, and now all of a sudden you feel like nobody likes you? Do you know that God's with you right there in the middle of that? Do you know that when you're at home, if you hear your parents arguing, and when you hear your parents argue, it can make you feel afraid? Do you know that in that moment, God is with you? He is. Jesus says this, remember, I am with you every single day. And church kids, do you know, when Moses learned that, he followed God back to Egypt, and God used him to help a whole bunch of people. And in the exact same way, you are going to live your life knowing that Jesus is with you every single moment. And because you know Jesus is with you, he is going to use you to help so many people. Church kids, everybody feels scared every now and then. But you and I, because of Jesus, get to know, hey, even though it looks like I'm alone, I'm actually never alone because Jesus is always with me.
Hey church kids, we hope that you enjoyed the message today. Did you know that you can now listen to Church Kids stories on the Amazon Alexa? It's so easy. All you have to do is say, hey Alexa, open Church Kids stories, and a bedtime story will play just for you. Parents, did you know that you can also enable this on your Amazon Alexa by saying, hey Alexa, enable Church Kids stories. And then you and your kids can listen to it together before bedtime. And if you don't have an Amazon Alexa, don't worry, you can still find these on YouTube and our Churchome app. We hope you love them as much as we do, and we hope you have a great week.